Then when we get to the list of their projections, we see, oh, these people are just foolish.
ESPN has done the unthinkable, and fans are absolutely furious. The latest rankings they dropped have sparked controversy, and rightfully so. For the first time, Caitlin Clark is ranked below A'ja Wilson, and the WNBA fanbase is in an uproar. I mean, are we watching the same sport here? Caitlin Clark has been a revolutionary force in women's basketball, shattering records and propelling the WNBA to new heights. Meanwhile, A'ja Wilson, well, her fan base seems to be talking more than she's playing lately. So why did ESPN make this questionable decision? Is it a bias, an agenda, or just a strategic attempt to avoid embarrassing A'ja Wilson? ESPN has ranked Clark number 2, just behind two-time MVP A'ja Wilson, and while some of you might be upset, it's time to break down why this ranking makes no sense. Let's be clear, Caitlin Clark has been the driving force behind the WNBA's resurgence. She's the one breaking records, selling out arenas, and making people who never cared about women's basketball suddenly debate whether they should buy season tickets. She's not just a player, she's a phenomenon, a walking highlight reel, and the most exciting thing to happen to the league in years. Yet ESPN, in their infinite wisdom, decides to put A'ja Wilson above her. Why? What has Wilson done recently that's more impactful than Caitlin Clark's revolutionary presence? For context, A'ja Wilson has 2 MVPs and 2 championships to her name. That's great, but let's not pretend she achieved that in a league that has since experienced a massive transformation. Before Caitlin Clark entered the scene, the WNBA was nowhere near as popular. Wilson might have been the top player in a league that wasn't drawing much attention, but now Caitlin Clark has ignited the league in a way that Wilson never could have on her own. In her rookie season, Clark has averaged a staggering 19.7 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 8.4 assists, leading the league in assists, and 1.3 steals. She has even blocked more shots than some WNBA veterans, including Angel Reese. I don't know about you, but when I see stats like that, it's hard to argue with the fact that Clark is more than just a player, she's an attraction. She's the reason casual fans are tuning in to WNBA games, and let's not forget, she's getting NBA fans to pay attention too. The level of attention she's drawing to women's basketball is unprecedented, and ESPN just doesn't seem to get it. Sure, ESPN will point to A'ja Wilson's MVPs and championships, but let's be real here. Those accolades came during a time when the WNBA wasn't even close to the spotlight it enjoys now. It's like comparing the best performance in a high school play to an A-list Hollywood actress taking the stage. A'ja Wilson's impact on the league wasn't nearly as significant as Clark's is right now. Caitlin Clark is bringing in the ratings, and her ability to sell out arenas is unparalleled. She's a cultural shift in the making, and it's evident in every game she plays. People are comparing her to the NBA Finals and packing arenas just to see her perform. It's almost laughable that ESPN would continue to rank Wilson ahead of Clark when Clark has single-handedly resurrected the WNBA's relevance. It's like choosing an outdated, clunky phone over the newest iPhone model. Sure, the old phone works, but no one in their right mind would choose it over the flashier, more exciting option. Caitlin Clark is that new iPhone, she's the face of the league, and ESPN's refusal to acknowledge that is baffling. There are also those who will argue that A'ja Wilson's legacy can't be ignored. Yes, she's been an exceptional player, but let's not forget that her greatest moments came in a league that wasn't under the microscope as it is today. ESPN has been pushing this idea that A'ja Wilson is the face of the WNBA for years, but the truth is, the league wasn't getting the attention it needed until Clark arrived. The ratings, the ticket sales, the viewership, they've all skyrocketed because of Clark's presence. Yet, despite the clear shift in the landscape, ESPN is still clinging to the old guard. Meanwhile, we're watching the Las Vegas Aces, a team that was once built to dominate, start to unravel. Kelsey Plum, Sydney Kelson, and Chelsea Gray are leaving or seeing their performances decline. Wilson may still be a key player, but her team is falling apart. And yet, ESPN still acts like she's the face of the league. It's almost like they're pretending the cracks aren't visible, but anyone paying attention can see the writing on the wall. As for Caitlin Clark, she's not just playing in the WNBA, she's taking it over. Every game she plays is an event, and her arrival in the league has caused cities to adjust their schedules just to accommodate her. Fans from all walks of life, NFL fans, baseball fans, even casual observers who never cared about women's basketball, are now flocking to her games. This isn't just about basketball. This is about cultural significance, and Caitlin Clark embodies that. She is not just a player, she's a movement. Caitlin Clark's rise is not some overnight sensation. The WNBA has been around for 28 years, but it's only in recent years that we've seen this kind of mainstream explosion. Clark is the one who's taking the WNBA from a niche sport to something that's becoming more widely accepted. It's not just about the games anymore, it's about the lifestyle, the culture, and the future of the league. A'ja Wilson's era might have been special, but it's now clear that Caitlin Clark is the one steering the ship. Let's not forget that A'ja Wilson's aces were built around the idea of forming a super team. The Big Four was a great concept, but as players leave and the team starts to lose its shine, the cracks in that strategy are becoming obvious. The aces are no longer the juggernaut they once were, and Wilson is left trying to salvage what's left. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark is walking into the WNBA like she owns the place, surrounded by a young, hungry roster with a strong supporting cast. She's not just playing the game, she's changing the game. The fact that ESPN still refuses to acknowledge Clark's dominance in this league is perplexing. The rankings as they stand are an example of the media's stubbornness and refusal to embrace change. ESPN continues to gas up A'ja Wilson and ignore the player who is making a real impact on the game. If the MVP race were based on excitement, influence, and viewership, Caitlin Clark would be an easy winner, but the media continues to cling to their outdated preferences. It's hard to understand how ESPN continues to back A'ja Wilson when all the metrics that actually matter, ticket sales, viewership, and engagement, are all pointing to Caitlin Clark as the face of the league. A'ja Wilson might have had her time, but the Caitlin Clark era is here, and it's only going to get bigger from here. The WNBA is entering a new phase, and it's clear that Clark is leading the charge. As for Angel Reese, let's talk about her for a second. ESPN had the audacity to push her as a rival to Caitlin Clark, but after entering the professional league, she's barely hanging on in the rankings. Reese had an excellent college career, but now that she's facing real competition every night, the reality is setting in. She's not the force the media hyped her up to be. Her college dominance doesn't translate to the pros, and the rankings reflect that. ESPN has finally given Reese the reality check she needed, placing her at number 12, and honestly, that's too high. The truth is, Caitlin Clark is the star of the show, and if there's anyone who's benefited from her rise, it's Angel Reese. From the media's obsession with the rivalry between Clark and Reese to the hype around Reese's college career, Reese has gained fame largely because of Clark. Now that she's in the pros, though, it's clear that she's not the player she was in college. When you think about the future of the WNBA, Caitlin Clark is the player to watch. She's not just a rookie, she's already making waves and changing the game. Her success in college has translated seamlessly to the pros, and she's not just competing for MVP, she's becoming one of the most influential athletes in sports today. And when the WNBA draft comes around, she's going to be the first pick, and you better believe she's going to lift the league to even greater heights. In conclusion, ESPN's rankings may have sparked controversy, but they've also exposed the truth. Caitlin Clark is the real star of the WNBA, and it's time for the media to recognize that. She's the player who's bringing attention to the league, and if ESPN doesn't adjust their rankings soon, they're going to be left behind. The Caitlin Clark era is here, and nothing is going to stop her from taking the WNBA and basketball as a whole by storm.